Conversations at Elevation. I'm one of your hosts, Jay, joined by the Electric Factory himself, as always, Clayton. How you doing, Clay?
I'm doing all right, Jay. Just glad to be at the end of another week. So, how are you? Have you been doing?
Hey, I can't complain. I cannot complain. Just taking a day at a time. Excited about all the cool stuff we're working on, and just ready to kind of get the ball rolling.
Yeah,
So, um, we go ahead introduce our guest. I'm really excited about this one.
yeah. I think going back to over the past 3 weeks or 2 weeks, and this is, I believe, our final week. We've been really trying to hit home on the mental health advocacy, and I think this is the perfect way to finish that up. We have our director of the University Counseling Center at the University of Wyoming, Dr. Toi Geil, I believe is how we pronounce her last name. I am not 100% sure, but she's her work throughout her life has been a really incredible work, and she does really important stuff. And we're really trying to hammer home the mental health advocacy, especially during the pandemic time. So I think this interview is a really important interview that we're going to have, and I'm excited for it.
Awesome. Well, without further ado, let's bring in Toy. How you doing, Toy?
I am doing well, Jay.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day, and I can only imagine that you're fairly busy.
And I feel honored. I feel honored by the invitation, and am really looking forward to our time together.
We're excited to have you. Well, let's just jump into it. We know you're a very busy person and have a busy, I'm sure, a busy Friday. So if we can start, just what has been your journey through university academia?
Yeah, and I just want to share. I'm a talker, and so I'll do my best to be concise. And I really want to start with my journey many decades ago, and I want to share with both you and Jay that I dropped out of college when I was a junior, and I was really struggling to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And I actually went back and forth between 6 different majors, and and then I was just like, okay, I'm taking time off, and I got a job working with troubled youth in an outdoor wilderness camp with a company called Vision Quest, and that job changed my life. It was just those young people really opened my eyes to the world and to the struggles that they had, and I was so lucky to be able to work with them that when I left that job, I knew I wanted to be a mental health professional because it was just so meaningful to travel with those young people on their journey. And so I went back to school, buckled down, made better grades. I graduated with a bachelor's in sociology, got into a master's in counselor education program, got that degree. And then when I got done, moved to the Washington, D.C. area. And my first job was on a mobile crisis unit. And it was a temporary position. Then I was able to work with individuals experiencing drug and alcohol difficulties in a residential treatment program. And I did that for a couple of years. And then I decided I really wanted to, have a little bit more control over my choices in terms of my employment. That work in the residential treatment program was awesome, and I also wanted to be able to have a lifestyle where I could work but didn't have to work from like 12 at night until 8 in the morning sometimes. So I was able to get into the University of Wyoming clinical psychology program, and I was able to come here and go to school. And I originally had planned to work in public mental health, but in the process of my graduate program, I got to do a graduate assistantship here in the University Counseling Center. And I loved working with college students. It was like so awesome. And it just like, because, the college students, they're learning about themselves, they're discovering their interest and discovering their values. And it's such a time of growth and challenge that I like fell in love with working with college students. And so after I graduated with my PhD at the turn of the last century in 2000, I was able to get a postdoc at the University of Utah Counseling Center and Medical Center. So I worked there for a year. That was after I did an internship here at the University Counseling Center, worked at University of Utah, and really enjoyed the work, learned a lot. My first job after my postdoc was at Western Washington University, and I was hired as the coordinator of consultation, outreach, and crisis intervention services. And I did that from 2001 until 2012. And that was really challenging work. And it was also very meaningful work. And I love the consultation and outreach piece of it, because I got to work with, just many different student groups, and got to do a lot of education and presentations to the campus community. So it was great. And then I was able to come back here to University of Wyoming in the fall of 2012, as I got hired as the associate director of the University Counseling Center. And I'd been looking for an opportunity to come back, because my graduate experience here at the University of Wyoming was phenomenally meaningful. I love the outdoors, and there's lots of incredible outdoor opportunities here, and really enjoyed my work with students when I was here at the University of Wyoming as a grad student. So I just feel incredibly fortunate that I got to come back. And in 2018, Keith Abashevsky, the previous director, left, and I became the interim director, and was hired in 2019 in May to be the director. And that's been a real journey for me. And I've learned a lot in terms of being an administrator. And I really appreciate that as a director, working with the incredible team of clinicians we have here at the University Counseling Center, that I can help influence things on an administrative level and advocate for the counseling center and the services we provide. So how did I do?
That was awesome.
Yeah.
You gave us a really perfect segue to our next question. What would you like our listeners to know about the services that the UCC offers, and where can they find that information?
Yeah, you bet. So in terms of what we offer here at the University Counseling Center, I think we offer a lot. We work on what's called a time-effective stepped care model of treatment. And what that means is that we do have a variety of services. And so primarily we're serving students who are main campus students who are enrolled, in classes on campus. And that's really changed with what's happened with COVID. And our mission is to serve the primary enrolled on-campus students. And so any student who's enrolled on campus classes, regardless of how many credits they're in, they have access to our services, and they're free and they're confidential. And when I talked about the stepped care model, basically what that means is, depending on what a student's needs are, we can match their needs to our services. We do a lot of outreach, and that's a way that we're reaching students all across the campus, whether they would come to the counseling center or not. And Dr. Julio Briones is amazing. And we are so fortunate to have him. And he coordinates our outreach programming, and he is also the assistant director of the counseling center. And so he does a lot of our outreach, but we all do outreach. So one aspect of what we do is we do the work with reaching students through outreach. We also can provide a lot of educational materials for students if they're wanting to learn more about various topics. We provide that. We provide crisis intervention services. And so if a student, and honestly, this does not matter, any student at the University of Wyoming, a distance learning student, a main campus student, any student at the University of Wyoming, if they're in crisis, they can call us during our normal business hours, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. during the academic year at 307-766-2187. They can call that number. They can tell our front office they're in crisis. Our front office will get their name and number, and they'll get one of us who's available to call that student back or to connect through Zoom, a confidential Zoom that we have. And we will do crisis intervention with that student to help them work with whatever's going on in that moment. And if a student's in a crisis after hours, we have an excellent after hours crisis service that they can call. And so if we're not open, weekends, holidays, doesn't matter. 4 a.m, doesn't matter. They can call our crisis number, which is 307-766-8989. And sometimes there's a little bit of wait for that. But within about 5 minutes, they'll be connected to a mental health professional who's awake and alert and there to help them. And when we do crisis intervention, we always do a safety assessment because we want to make sure that the student is safe and that others around the student are safe. And then once we make sure folks are safe, then we move right on into helping them address whatever's going on in that moment. So the crisis services are a very important aspect of what we offer. Additionally, if a student wants to meet with us in person, and right now we're doing Zoom, but if they want to meet with us, all they got to do is call our main number and talk to our folks in the front office, and the people in the front office will get that student scheduled for an initial drop-in appointment. And the student will fill out some of our basic paperwork that we're able to have them do through a confidential portal. They fill out our basic paperwork. They get scheduled to meet with us, and then they meet with us for, someplace between, 20, 25 minutes. And then at the end of that time, we talk about what looks like the best way to proceed based on our services and what their needs are. And we have groups. We have awesome groups that we offer, and a variety of groups we can get students into. We work very closely with the Wellness Center in providing Big Sky workshops. We also provide the Self-Love and Happiness workshop, along with other individuals here in the university, including Lena Newland, who's awesome. So we do those workshops. And then if we're a good fit for what a student needs, we can provide them with time-effective individual counseling. And when I talk about time-effective, we really cater our services to what the student needs. If a student is needing longer-term counseling or a type of counseling that we don't offer that's outside our scope of care, we're going to work with that student and get them connected to the very best service for what their needs are. And that would include some follow-up meetings. We're very fortunate that we have access to the Psychology Center, which is run through the Clinical Psychology Program that offers a variety of specialized service. We also have access to the Wellsprings Clinic, which is a training clinic through the Counselor Education Program. We've got access to Community Mental Health System, Peak Wellness, Albany Clinic for mental health and health needs, and a lot of private practitioners. And so I'm just really pleased with what we offer. We offer a lot of services. And I want to say a few things about kind of how we offer care. Students are the expert on what they need. And so when we meet with students, we all work to be culturally humble, to know that the student who's meeting with us, they're the expert. And while we may have some things that we can offer and provide, and to assist them in addressing whatever's going on for them, we want students to feel welcomed. We want them to feel respected. We work to provide a safe and inclusive environment, and to really understand that student in terms of where they're coming from. We all work to understand our own privilege. We work to understand, and be aware of what assumptions we make, and to honestly check them at the door. Because when I'm meeting with a student, Clayton and Jay, I'm meeting with a person who has unique life experiences and many different identities, and someone who's experienced, differing levels of power and oppression and discrimination, and we all want to be aware of that and hold space for that. So I'm going to stop.
Well, I kind of want to touch on that. Like, how difficult is that sometimes to check that that privilege, or to check that like this student is the expert on their experiences and understanding that. How difficult is that? Because I can only imagine that it's not easy because you want to help them.
Yeah, and honestly, sometimes, you know, sometimes Jay, we mess up. And and when that happens, I know we all want to take responsibility for that. Because um, impact is real. And I, as a clinician, need to own that. And so when you ask how do I check my assumptions, first of all, I need to be aware of them as best I can. And part of that is that we do ongoing diversity training as a staff and a team. We've been real fortunate that the university has supported our professional development. So we've had access for funds to get professional development. And so we get training. So we're aware. And that's a big piece of it, because if I'm not aware of my assumptions, they're going to come back and bite me in the backside. So I have to be aware of them. And that's really super important. And yeah, and it's hard. I know that my experience in the world as a white middle class woman who had access to being able to get a degree, a couple of them, I'm very fortunate, and it's shaped the way that I view the world. And so I really work to be aware of that and to not assume that someone who might look like me has had the same experience, because they may not. And not to assume I know the experience that someone who comes from a different race, a different gender, different sexual orientation, not to assume what their experience is. I need to understand the dynamics that go on in this country, in this community, in the world, but I really do need to check my assumptions.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really awesome what you guys do, instead of, because at the counseling center you can't really paint a broad brush or you're going to miss a lot. And it sounds like from what you guys really take that individual approach, and it's obviously it works the best, I feel like, and not just paint an entire portion of someone that you just look from their appearances with a broad brush. You take the time to understand where they're coming from, their experiences, and use that for how you can help them and use it, which is really awesome. So obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic right now. How have you seen the approach to change this during this unprecedented time? Has it been a positive approach in your opinion?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good question. And the pandemic really has changed things. And, I think it's made us all become more aware in a lot of ways about, things that impact people's access to mental health care. And not that we haven't been aware of that in the past, but I think it's created a greater awareness of facilitating access to mental health care, and what needs to happen for us to be able to do that. I think one of the really good things that has come out of the way that we've adapted our services is, prior to the pandemic, the University Counseling Center was only providing in-person services. And when the pandemic hit, we had to adjust very quickly to being able to offer telehealth services, telehealth mental health services. And so we got trained real fast and real quick in how to do that. And we've been offering our services through telehealth mental health since kind of mid to late March. And that has, I think, opened up access to people who might not have been able to come in and see us before. And I think it's also made access harder for other individuals who are more comfortable with in-person services. And in terms of tele mental health, I think it's here to stay. I mean, we're going to continue to offer it after the pandemic is over, because it's a good way for a lot of people to be able to get in and see us. So I think those are some ways that the pandemic has really impacted how we deliver service. I've been really impressed with the University of Wyoming administration, and they've directed us as a counseling center to be available to all our students. So while our primary mission is for main campus students, if there's a distance learning student and they're in crisis and they call and connect with us, we're going to meet with them. We're going to talk to them. We're going to do crisis intervention and stabilization, and then we're going to help them get connected with services in their area. And we're going to help them. We're going to be there for them. So we've really been directed to be there for all of our students, and I think that is really positive. And I do really appreciate, and I think we all appreciate that this shift to the online environment has been really challenging for many of our students. And I think students sometimes struggle with, managing that shift to the online learning, and they may need to see us and they're just trying to get their classes done. And so we've really been working to get our services advertised. And Dr. Courtney was really great in getting our services more widely advertised, for our students, so that they can have access to us. And so I think that's been really positive.
Yeah, I think that's so important that we're meeting the students where we can and trying to help them adjust as best as they can. Do you think that obviously there's some like stigma in terms of like approaching mental health and discussing it and being aware of where you are at yourself. Do you think that the shift to the telehealth has maybe helped more people feel comfortable approaching that?
Yeah,
Like
that's it's a really good question. And what I'm real super aware of, Jay, is there is stigma in terms of connecting with mental health. I don't know that telehealth has reduced the stigma per se. And I think that we as our, we all need to be, we're in the counseling center and the university. We need to address stigma. And stigma it's different depending on the part of the country that you're in to some degree, which to me has been really interesting. When I first came here to the University of Wyoming in 2012, I think there was more stigma for many of our students to access our services. And that's been decreasing because as I've been here, more and more students every year have accessed our services. And when I was at Western Washington University, it seemed to be like overall there was less stigma there. And I don't know if that was so much a West Coast kind of a thing or, more the students that attended Western Washington University. But I think there are regional differences in terms of stigma, certainly cultural differences, a lot of things that affect stigma. So I don't know that I answered your question. I think what I do want to say about stigma, Jay, is that as human beings, we all struggle in our lives. And, there are many things that affect us. And there is systemic oppression and racism that affects people differently. Socioeconomic, status affects people differently. It affects their access to care. And I think we truly have to have an awareness of that and then come back to this awareness that we will all struggle in our lives. And I want to work, the counseling center wants to work to make our services accessible to everybody because that is important. And I truly think that sometimes people think when they're struggling that there's something wrong with them. And I'm like, no, it's about being a human and it's about being in these systems that we're in. And so, please reach out for help and connect with safe people and safe resources. Yeah, because that's important because, I want the counseling center to be a safe place. And I want students to have the experience of we are a safe place. And it's going to, and, a student's going to get to decide that, in their interactions with us. You know, and the other thing I want to put out there too is the connection that a student has with their counselor is really important. The relationship is important. And if a student doesn't feel that they've got a, a wholesome relationship with their counselor, if they don't feel that their counselor is getting them, if they don't feel that their counselor is there for them, we've got 7 clinicians on staff. And if it's not working, then I want that student to know that they can ask for a different clinician, because the relationship is very, very important. And I want students to feel like they're getting what they need in their services from us.
Yeah, for sure. How has the mental health advocacy conversation changed on college campuses throughout your long career being on campus and both in the public? And then how do you think or hope it will continue to advance over the next 5, 10, however, in future years?
Yeah, and I think in terms of advocacy, advocacy happens in many different forms and in many different ways. And I think part of the advocacy is, as mental health professionals, recognizing that we have a role in helping create access to mental health services. And I've been really lucky and fortunate that I think every system I've worked in really has recognized the role of college counseling centers and mental health professionals in advocating for access to services for everybody. People of different ethnicities, races, cultural backgrounds, and advocating for more services to be available so we can meet the needs. I think that that's been a big part of my journey through the time I've worked in college counseling centers, which has been over 2 decades. And I think the other piece of advocacy that's really important is that as mental health professionals, there's been a growing awareness that we need to be helping and creating access for people from all different backgrounds to be able to go to graduate school and get degrees in counseling and mental health professions, MSWs, psychology degrees, master's level counselor degrees. That we are recognizing more and more that we need to have open access so that more and more people from diverse backgrounds are mental health care professionals, so that we have a diversity of staff offering services to a diversity of our clients, and that's been something really important. And one of the things that's my goal for the College Counseling Center here is I want students, when they pull up the Counseling Center webpage, and that's where you can get information of our services as University Counseling Center, and our web pages. But I want students to pull up the web pages, and I want them to see themselves reflected in the staff. And to me, that's very important. I want a diverse staff, and I want to be able to hire diverse staff, and I want to retain a diverse staff. And that's part of the advocacy that I think has been growing, and the need and the awareness for that has certainly grown over the past 2 decades.
Yeah, representation matters.
It does.
It matters everywhere. We have 1 or 2 more questions for you. This question, I'm not really. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but I also know that you may not be the expert on it. But why do you, as a minority, I think that the mental health discussion and the years of oppression and the built-in trauma that a lot of minority groups may have, there's not a lot of outlets or access to that. What can universities or communities do to kind of help give them those resources to kind of work through those years and generations of trauma and everything like that?
That is an incredibly important question. And, I think in terms of what we can do, um, you know, to recognize that we live in systems that do discriminate in various ways, and that and it has a huge impact on the well-being of our students of color, you know, and our students from minority populations. And so the recognition of that, and then the willingness to offer services that meets our students where our students are at. And it may not be the traditional, call the counseling center, get set up with a drop-in appointment, do the paperwork, and meet with a counselor. That may not be the best way for our students of color and our minority students to reach us. And so we have to have different ways for them to reach us. And so Dr. Briones has really been pivotal in his outreach role with us in terms of he's worked with the Students of Color Support Group. We all do outreach, and he does a lot of our outreach. And so he does outreach. He'll meet with student clubs. He's an advisor for MECHA. I mean, he's doing a lot of things, and we're looking at how do we reach our students in ways that may not be the traditional counseling, because that may not be where they're going to reach us. And to hire staff that are well educated and aware of the impact of discrimination and oppression, to continue to be educated in those areas, and to never assume that someone has had a particular experience. Again, to go back to the student is the expert when they meet with us, and to come from that place, and to be humble. Oh, for God's sakes, to be humble. That's important. Very, very important.
No, thank you. That was a profound answer.
So how we like to have our guests kind of in this is by words of wisdom or motivation. And what we were thinking of with having the director of the counseling center on, we're hoping that you could give our listeners or the people watching right now just 1 to 2 things that they can do, like everyday things that they can do that can help their mental health during that day. Or if you have any strategies that you do to you wake up in the morning and you're not really feeling too hot about yourself or about the day, like how can just one to 2 things that somebody can do at their home just to improve their mental outlook and their mental health for that day.
Man, that's great. So you're asking me, like, what do I do, and what can I suggest? Man, you know what? You and I and all of us, we have this one life. I mean, this is it. This is this moment. It's it. It's what we have. And so, to know that yesterday is yesterday. And when I wake up in the morning, it's a new day. And when I wake up in the morning, and I'm really encourage everybody to do this. Like, when you wake up, allow yourself to lay in bed for a few moments and to take in a big, deep breath and to feel your breath in your body, and to feel the warmth of the bed holding you, and to feel the covers on your body, and to just let yourself feel that, and to breathe, and to know that it's a new day, and to know that while there may be some challenges that will come during the day, that everything is constantly changing, and that whatever arises, it's workable. And in order for it to be workable, a lot of times we need to reach out to those people who are safe, we trust, and support us, and to reach out to those people. And if we're really struggling, most definitely reach out to the counseling center. And then, another thing I want to encourage folks to do is this neuropsychologist named Rick Hansen has got this great technique that he encourages people to use. And basically, he talks about how our minds through kind of an evolutionary process are Teflon for the positive and Velcro for the negative. And so if during the day you're having an experience that's pleasurable and positive, actually slow down for a moment and notice that you're having a pleasurable moment and allow yourself to drop into the experience of that pleasurable moment and to absorb it and to just be with it for maybe like 15 to 30 seconds. And if there's any worries about it passing, just let go of that and just be with the pleasurable experience. Because if we can take in the good, and when it happens, it can really have a positive impact on us. And then, you know what? If you're in a moment of suffering, to notice that too, and to name it, and to hold yourself with a lot of kindness around that. I think that's important. That's what I have.
That's awesome. I think that's a perfect way to end this. Again, I'm going to ask you to stay on for a little bit as we wrap up. Thank you for joining us this week. Again, for Conversations at Elevation, Toi Geil from the University Counseling Center. This has been a pleasure. I hope you all have been enjoying this series. For more information, visit the University Counseling Center's website. For information on what's happening in campus recreation, as we're entering phase 3 and opening on September 28th, visit our website. We'll put the link in the description on YouTube. Thank you for joining us, and as always, stay well and be well.